we are. It is good to be here on a Friday morning, and hopefully, some people are awake. We've got this morning, by the way, I got my camera working again. Boy, was I bummed last week. Um, Spent all that time trying to get the camera ready, and anyway, I ended up on the phone instead, my most unfavorite thing in the world. So, where am I? We are in John chapter 13 this morning, just looking at things that Jesus said that were maybe confusing. Um, and this is confusing what Jesus is saying here, but I don't think people have been confused. I just think they've kind of taken it wrong in one way. Um, but let's look at it. In John chapter 13, Jesus says in verse 13 through 15, he says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your teacher and Lord, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you." Okay, what's going on here is that Jesus is now ready to go to the cross. It was right after this that they ended up, uh, after much more dialogue from Jesus, uh, Jesus would be taken to the trial and then crucified. And so it was all about done for Jesus, and he was ready to go to the cross. And he gets up after dinner and he strips, and listen, he strips down to his chonies, okay? And he wraps a towel around himself and he gets a basin with water, and all the guys are sitting there real quiet, going, "Whoa, what's he doing now?" And he began to wash their feet one at a time, of course. And he made his way all the way around the room. And then he explains to them, "Now listen, I've done, just as I've done with you, now you got to do uh, to each other." Now, what this has come to for a lot of people, and what a lot of people do, or even pastors, they'll have like foot washing ceremonies. That's where, there's this display of this, I don't know, some kind of humility, and where, somebody's washing somebody else's feet, and then I think you take turns doing it. And I've heard from people that this is a very emotional thing, and it makes them really feel humble, and all of this. And certainly you got to feel humble while you're reaching between somebody else's toes. I mean, I am I'm really not into those things. I just not into those foot washing ceremonies. I honestly don't think they do much good. But again, you may have done it and you may have felt good about it. Certainly, it's not a sin. But I want us to understand that this is definitely not what Jesus means by this. In fact, what was happening there was something very cultural that they could see was going on, even though they didn't quite understand why he was doing it at the time. Um, but for you and me, there's no cultural significance. And so, anyway, boy, I tell you what, I've had people tell me, "Oh man, I'm always afraid, going to these special retreats and things that they're going to have some sort of foot washing ceremony because, I want my feet to be clean before that happens, or I've got corns and bunions, and who needs to be playing with those." Um, Understand that the disciples did not practice this literally after this happened. Um, Yes, Jesus said, "Wash each other's feet." But Jesus also told them to chop their hands off and pluck their eyes out. And we know that that was figurative. And so this too was figurative. And I'll tell you, literally to wash somebody's feet that's like, you know, kind of messed up and creepy, but it can make you feel like, whoa, you've really done something. But the figurative here is way more difficult, way more real, reaches way down more into who you are, into your heart. Um, so the disciples, they saw what he was doing. They didn't understand though. They're going, when Jesus made it around to Peter, Peter was the first one to open his mouth because that's what Peter does. And he goes, "You're not going to wash my feet," and this great display of, again, a display of humility. Um, and Jesus says, if I don't wash it, it's not going to, Jesus, and you can't be clean unless I wash you. And he goes, "Oh, then wash my whole body." Peter always wanted to have it his way. But what Jesus said to them, what Jesus said to Peter, "What I'm doing, you don't understand now, but you will after this." Which, by the way, that is a little topic all its own, because so much of what Jesus does in our lives, we don't understand it. Or sometimes he will give an instruction or a commandment, in his word. And I go, "Well, why should I do that? Why should I be like this?" He goes, "You know what? You may not understand it now, but you will. So just follow me." And certainly that's been a lot of my life. But anyway, so what was he getting at then? If he doesn't want us to be, cleaning out between each other's toes, what is he getting at? Well, how many times, probably a zillion, he told them, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, you got to be the servant of all. What Jesus did for them at that time was he stripped down to his underwear and began to wash their feet, because when they entered this room to have supper, there were nobody else there. There were no servants there. But you see, in the home, in that time, the lowest servant of that home had the lowest job, and that was to wash the feet of guests. They walked around in sandals on dirt roads in those days. And so anytime somebody arrived, they were to, the lowest servant was to pour oil on them because they stunk to high heaven and their feet were filthy. And so they would take a basin and wash the feet of the visitors. It was not a fun job. It wasn't a good job, but it was his job. And, lowest on the totem pole kind of a thing. And so if, somebody had that job, certainly they couldn't wait till the master got another servant, because then he wouldn't have to wash feet anymore and somebody else could do it. And so they saw Jesus like stripping down to appear as the lowest servant. And we learn something here, as Jesus said, "Hey, you know what? If I've done this, you do this for each other." And it's not the literal washing of the feet, but it is to be the lowest servant. In that group of 12, it was to be the least of the 12. Not as in flogging yourself and saying, "I'm a loser, I'm a loser." No, but to think of others better than yourself, as it reads in Philippians chapter 2. And then to serve them as a result of the fact that they're just better than you. So this is not something that Jesus was telling them to do as far as, hey, this is not a display of humility. I don't want you to put on outward displays of humility. I've said, I got so excited the first time I said that already. Display of humility. Humility can't be displayed. Hey, look at me, how humble I'm being. Am I being humble? I must be great. No, this isn't about a display of humility, but rather it is about a quiet attitude of being the least. It is about having a true character of being the least. As we go on in the chapter, Jesus says, "Hey guys, I got a new commandment for you, that you love one another." And you think, well, that's not really that new. I've been seeing that all through the Bible. We know this is a love thing. But it was new because he said that you would love one another as I have loved you. Nobody had ever seen this kind of love that Jesus displayed over the course of the 3 years with them. He took care of them. He fed them. He he was quiet. And now he said, I'm here, us 13 people here. I'm here and I'm the lowest of all of you guys. I'm putting myself beneath Judas. He washed Judas's feet. What a trip. And so as you and I consider these things, we don't need to go washing each other's feet. I mean, if you want to do it, I mean, go for it. You stay away from me. But rather, the Lord is just saying, hey, I want to show you what a servant is. He's the least. And I'm sure at this point they started to understand, like, oh, I get it. I see why you washed my feet. And I see what you're saying to us, that we would truly serve one another, not just out of compulsion, but out of our hearts, understanding that we are the least. And then Jesus did something even lower. He took one more giant step below that lowest servant when he laid down his life. And Jesus said, the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. And so Jesus went all the way to the bottom. And you know what? Nobody ever came from such a high place as him, that he would go all the way to the lowest place. And you know what's so cool about Jesus going to the lowest place and serving me the way he's done that, and serving you the way he's done that, in that he went down so low so that he wouldn't miss anybody as far as finding people all over this world that would come to salvation. If he didn't go so low, he couldn't have found me. But he went all the way to the bottom so he can get anybody. He is the real servant. And if we follow him, then we are going to have attitudes of service, but more that attitude of humility, that maybe we are the least. And what a great thing to serve people knowing how much we have been served. So anyway, it's great hanging with you today. I hope some people were watching. Hey, Scott, I see you. So God bless you guys. Next week, I want to talk about service some more, but not such a happy way. Some of you know where I'm going with this. All right. Love you guys. God bless you. Where's the off button around here? I found